Marlon Wayans, right? We know that he is part of the Wayans family, who I think is criminally underrated as a family in Hollywood. People acknowledge them, that they're a family and the connectivity. But when you really, really think about the fact that since the 80s and all of the things that they have been involved in, from, Keenan writing on, was it Raw or Yeah, it was Raw. In Living Color, Hoe Cakes and the Winky Dinky Man in Hollywood. No, that's Robert Townsend, but Keenan was
Yes.
involved in that, I believe,
Yes.
because they were
Yeah,
partners and
yep,
things, right? I'm gonna get you,
that's
sucker.
correct.
That's what I was trying to think of. But Keenan and Robert were involved early because Robert had the partners in crime thing, and Keenan
But no, yeah,
or Damon would be on there
he
sometimes.
definitely wrote for Hollywood Shuffle.
He did, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and he was in it as Jerry Curl.
Jerry Curl,
Pop,
do
pop,
the
pop.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That is
Yes.
right. So, you know, on and on and on up until things like, White Chicks, the 50 Shades of Grey parody that's done, lots of things. So, suffice it to say, Sean and Marlon Wayans have what? Put on a dress, right? On In Living Color, Jamie Foxx was Wanda and did what? Put on a dress.
Yeah.
One of Jim Carrey's most popular characters on there was what? Helga. Remember the bodybuilder
No,
and the
that her
little
name
boy?
was Vera DeMilo.
Oh, Vera DeMilo.
Yeah.
Who's Helga? I don't know. But you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I thought it was Helga.
No, it's Vera
Helga
DeMilo.
Pataki. I'm thinking of the cartoon. What is the cartoon? Hey Arnold. Anyway, listen, it's a 90s
I was
thing.
about to
It,
say
it, it, it
you.
comes together.
Yeah.
90s Nickelodeon. At
Yes.
any rate, they all, at one point in time, jumped into character and made classic performances that we all laughed at, we all enjoyed, right? But there's always been, I feel, the dichotomy of whereas, as far as black men and masculinity, have had a problem or felt that they were being emasculated in those roles or in those situations where a dress was involved. So Marlon has a different take on why he thinks that we shouldn't critique these actors and so forth.
What about the black man putting on a dress conversation?
You talking to a black man that put on a dress?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. That conversation to me is it's silly because it's a negative thing that is only in black people. We have for some reason been programmed to look down on the craziest parts about our experience, that we're supposed to not embrace our past, not embrace our history, not embrace our heroes, not embrace our different levels of comedy, that we have to be this way. When Robin Williams puts on a dress and is Mrs. Doubtfire, he gets nominated for an Oscar, and white people think it's brilliant. His community embraces him. When Dustin Hoffman puts on a dress in Tootsie and he wins an Oscar, he's labeled brilliant. When black people put on dresses, all of a sudden we're labeled by our own people like something negative. And I'm like, we did White Chicks. That's a classic movie. Mm-hmm. It's a classic. I don't care what nobody says.
No,
It's
no.
a classic.
Everyone says it's a classic.
That whole thing about, you put on a dress and you selling out, that is not an artist's mindset. When you're an artist, you go out and you create art.
So, I think that he has some valid points. I think that I'm gonna go old school comedian white. Milton Berle. He wore a dress occasionally. It's part of the thing, right? If you think of some of the old SNL skits, it happened. And he's right. Like, I think that as far as the Caucasian community, at times they do allow the space in some ways. We're not going to say that they are open about everything because I'm sure people have their problems, but sometimes they do allow the space for people to get a little weird when it comes to the arts. You know what I mean? Or a little more open. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that Hollywood just wants to emasculate black men by making them put on a dress?
You said something. The operative word was allow. Black men. First of all, We do it to ourselves because we hold ourselves to a stereotypical standard where black masculinity is concerned. You have to be a certain way. You can't express emotion. You have to be strong. Express a certain level of dominance, and um, it's just not allowed to go outside of this stereotypical mode of what is expected of black men or how we should behave. Um, that's just that. So there is no wiggle room for that, because we hold ourselves to a certain standard. However, I think that he's speaking from a point where he is secure with who he is and tunes out the noise because he knows what his intention is when he's going into it. And it takes a person to be able to tune out the noise to do that, because when you're black in the spotlight, there's a whole lot of noise that comes along with it. So he's in a different mindset.
So one thing that I will say about Marlon Wayans is he's a Leo, right? I like the maturation of Marlon.
Hmm.
Do you know how he's grown as far as his craft and things of that nature? Um, I appreciate it. I appreciate his perspective and that he's dived into it. But I also understand why some feel like, no, they're trying to take us down as men and trying to, put black women in a certain thing too when they allow the black men to do this. It's so complicated because there's so many layers of other things that
That
come
go
along
yes,
with our representation. It is because there were so few avenues, I feel, to be seen in all of the different aspects. So I think that the feelings attached to it also are, listen, we're only going to be seen on TV a couple of times a year. Like at these earlier points and things like that, or in these films. Remember when we would get like one black film a year? Do we have to be in a dress? But then I think about the early 70s and how Flip Wilson, as a black man, had his own TV show that he was producing. And one of the most popular characters was
Geraldine.
Geraldine.
Yeah,
Do you know? But he was a producer of that show at a
and
time.
I was gonna make that point. I was gonna say that is probably the difference between the point. Sean
And Marlon.
and Marlon both, they write those characters, and it's a choice. No one is putting them in a dress or it's telling a studio exec is not in the background saying, "Hey, do this." It's their choice, and they sign up for it, and they write it that way. So that's the distinct difference, I think. And when you're coming from that perspective, when you're signing up and doing it yourself, you,
Because same thing with Martin,
yeah,
Shanae. Everybody loves Shanae. People
right,
were not going in on Martin for the most part for playing that character. People just thought it was mad funny,
right.
right? So I don't know. Shout out to Marlon Wayans.